Hello and welcome to part 2 of a 20-minute workshop on Romeo and Juliet, exploring its claim, the claim it has as the greatest love story ever told. In part 1 I outlined some contextual frames to consider that claim against and introduced the concept of courtly love and courtly language. In part 2, this video, we'll be expanding our understanding of courtly language using examples from the text to consider what else the language of the court, what else courtly language is used for in the play. This set change that you will see in the background and in the main body of the video is because this was originally a one-part video and I've had to split it in two because of its length, and I'm filming the start and ends of these new videos in my home office. So that explains why there's a change in set, audio and everything else at the start and ends of this video. Okay, let's get into it. Right, moving on, I would now like to consider the other uses of the conventions of courtly language in Romeo and Juliet to help highlight how endemic this convention is to the text. The example of courtly language split across the next 3 slides shows how it is used between Juliet and Lady Capulet to discuss the sensitive topic of Juliet's marriage prospects. Here, Lady Capulet begins by drawing attention to how Lady Capulet was a married mother at Juliet's age, and saying that Paris is marriageable. The nurse chimes in and says that Paris is a man of wax, presumably some kind of insult, though I don't quite understand it. And Lady Capulet retorts by pointing out that he is the most handsome man in Verona. Capulet then suggests to Juliet that she ought to pay more attention to Paris, much like she would with reading a book. This book metaphor becomes the main driver for essentially asking Juliet if she'll consider Paris's marriage offer because it would be an upwards marriage for the family. Juliet responds by taking up the book reading metaphor her mother used, confirming that she will seriously consider Paris should she like the look of him. Using the reading metaphor established by Lady Capulet, Juliet gives herself room to say a positive outcome may not happen because she might not like the book, she might not look to like. Another way that courtly language is used in Romeo and Juliet is part of insulting other characters. In this exchange between Mercutio and Romeo from Acts 2, Scene 4, again split over multiple slides, we can see multiple metaphors being used between the two men that all share in insulting each other's fertility and sexuality. Mercutio begins by saying that Romeo is without his roe like a dried herring. Roe refers to fish eggs, and without them Romeo is like a dead fish. Mercutio is effectively calling Romeo infertile. Mercutio then proceeds to say that Romeo's sexual liaisons with anyone would rehyme them, as in reseal the hymen and turn a partner into a virgin again. Effectively the inverse of sex, I guess. He finally calls Romeo French, a common euphemism for effeminacy and homosexuality. So all this is really Mercutio calling Romeo an infertile homosexual who is bad in bed. Romeo doesn't initially really know how to respond at the outset of this insulting, but picks up his stride as the conversation goes on. This turn begins to happen when he says his pump is well flowered, meaning he sleeps with a lot of women, implying, by contrast, that Mercutio does not. From this, Mercutio attempts to suggest that Romeo has had too much sex, and his pump is worn. At this point, he also compliments Romeo's witty responses and asks that he follow this jest. Mercutio is attempting to save face at this point because Romeo's witty response has upset the sureness with which Mercutio began hurling insults. So, as Romeo gains the upper hand, Mercutio is kind of just saying, lol, JK, rather than any kind of, serious insult contest happening, which is what was happening at the start. From their sexuality, the insult contest switches to them trying to insult each other's wits, with this wild goose chase metaphor used in the middle of this slide. This attempt ends with Mercutio telling Romeo something equivocal to give him an inch and he'll take a mile. He attempts to win this part of the argument by metaphorically calling Romeo greedy and gluttonous. They both keep going, with Mercutio returning to insulting Romeo's sexuality, though this time is focused on his clear pining for someone. Again, the insult is about how Romeo is being dreamy and sociable. It has evocations of effeminacy to it, because masculinity is not often associated with dreamy expressions of romantic feeling. The argument, in fact, only ends when Benvolio interrupts and begs that they stop. Benvolio's interruption indirectly gestures towards another way courtly language is used in Romeo and Juliet, and that is for using metaphor to speak above your station and say what is on your mind in a clear but coded manner. Take, for example, this extract from Act 2, Scene 5, where the nurse and Juliet are talking about Romeo. Here the nurse tells Juliet that yes, Romeo is a very handsome man with a nice face, great legs, and a great body. That said, he is quite rude and haughty, not the flower of courtesy. The nurse does concede that he might be nice, though, as gentle as a lamb. She is clearly frustrated by Juliet's pining for a somewhat unsuitable match. All she knows about Romeo is that he is physically attractive, and then exclaims something that sounds like find out the hard way what this man is like. Juliet wittily responds that she knew all this already, and it will not change her mind. So, at the start of this workshop, I proposed an alternative way of thinking about Romeo and Juliet, where we consider the play more as a tale of youthful desire and extreme depths of feeling rather than as quote-unquote the greatest love story ever told. In support of this argument, I explored the notion of courtly love and how its literary conventions mask eroticism through extended metaphors between characters. On closer inspection, it became apparent that courtly love is used throughout the play by multiple characters to talk about a range of topics. What, then, are we to make of this? In all the examples I selected to demonstrate different uses of courtly language between characters, eroticism was not the shared component, but there was always a clear fixation on the body in a highly carnal way. Carnal refers to language or actions that relate to physical, especially sexual, needs and activities. Romeo and Juliet clearly express carnal desires for each other. This is one of the main drives of the play, but carnality appears throughout the play as well. When Lady Capulet and Juliet talk about marrying Paris, they are talking about an arrangement which unites two families, accruing power for the Capulet family. These types of marriage often place significance on the fact that the wife will bear sons, so this conversation is, indirectly, about sex. The insult contest between Mercutio and Romeo is almost entirely about their virility and stupidity. The first insult is about Romeo being an infertile homosexual who is bad in bed, and it carries on like that. Finally, the nurse and Juliet talk about Romeo, first acknowledging that Romeo is physically attractive. He incites sexual desire. By looking at these extracts and seeing what they share, we learn that the play cloaks carnality, rather than sexuality, in metaphor, in accordance to the conventions of courtly language. Romeo and Juliet is therefore a carnalized play, obsessed with an embodied and felt sensation of love and lust, rather than a play about a disembodied, vague idea of love. Sex and sexuality lie slightly beneath much of the language of the play. Though the play is about star-crossed lovers, it cannot be ignored that love is not reducible only to an elevated emotional state, but is also a physical embodied feeling as well. Love is characterized not just by a heady feeling, but also by sensations like butterflies in the stomach. And lovers refers to sexual as well as romantic attraction between people. To close out this workshop on courtly love and the question of love in Romeo and Juliet, I invite you to think critically about my concluding statement. Do you agree or disagree? Are you convinced, and to what extent? You can pause the video here and write a few sentences in response to these questions, or you can just sort of sit and think about it when the video ends. This illustration of Romeo and Juliet nicely illustrates the eroticism hidden behind all the courtly language by directly drawing attention to Juliet's exposed breasts. What's important to this image, and therefore what this image says is important about the play, is the carnal, bodily and sexual desire between the two principal actors, Romeo and Juliet. Okay, thank you for taking part in the second part of the workshop. If you're interested in looking at the first part, which establishes a contextual frame for the star-crossed lover story and introduces the notions of courtly love and courtly language, the link to part 1 of this video is on the screen now and will be in the description of the video too. Thank you for watching, listening and participating in this workshop. If you're interested in learning more about what it's like to study English literature and/or creative writing at university, you can start with our website, which is link is on the slide. Feel free to contact us with questions at the email address on the slide as well. The link should be live in the description of the video. Thank you.